Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to betonline.ag today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Penn State's 2025 training camp begins as of today. Welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Today, we're taking a look at what training camp could hold for the Penn State Nittany Lions. So many expectations for this upcoming season. Position battles to watch. We've been talking about that for a while. A lot more nitty-gritty that we can get into. Also, a lot of little pieces of news that came out of Big Ten media days last week. Some stuff in terms of the recruiting trail that Justin King has firsthand knowledge of and beyond that. So a lot of stuff that we can get to here on this episode of State of State. I want to kick off first with some final quotes just to wrap up Big Ten Media Day availability last week for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Of course, head coach James Franklin, quarterback Drew Aller, center Nick Dawkins, and safety Zachy Wheatley made the trip out to Las Vegas, and we're speaking on behalf of the Penn State football team. So there were a lot of little nuggets that came out of it. We touched on it last week, and it's nearly impossible to gather all of them because there's so many media outlets. There was one from James Franklin that I want to get to here in a moment, but first I want to start with Drew Aller. He believes this upcoming season will be the best wide receiver room he's ever had. Now, I don't think that's a stretch. At the same time, I keep coming back to we're going to learn a lot here in training camp because arguably the top three wide receivers on the roster are all transfers. So you have no idea what this actually looks like in season. So from your perspective, having played wide receiver, been in some great wide receiver rooms, obviously you switched full-time to cornerback, but still you have experience on that side of the ball, Justin. Would you agree with that? On paper, is this the best wide receiver core Drew Aller's had at Penn State?
Best receiver core on paper? Possibly. Yeah, I think when you talk about guys that have been productive in the past and are coming in with some evidence of impact that they had, whether it's my guy from SC or the Syracuse, even the two transfers that are coming in, had previous production because everybody else has been somewhat unproven that was stepping out there. I mean, besides Tyler Warren, but I think from a on paper standpoint, that's a factually accurate statement.
Wide receiver Trebor Pena from Syracuse. People are very excited about. Devontae Ross, the transfer from Troy, showed flashes during spring ball, and that's great, and is a transfer, as I mentioned, from Troy in the Sun Belt. So there's still that question of how is this going to translate to Big Ten ball, potentially top 5 in the country football. So see how that goes. And then also Kyron Hudson transferring within the Big Ten from USC to Penn State, has the ability to be a highlight reel catch type of guy, very consistent at USC in a crowded wide receiver room. So now does he have the chance to branch out? And there's also the depth pieces there of the handful of guys that are still on the roster in that wide receiver room from last year. I know there aren't that many people that are doing backflips over Liam Clifford, but at least there's that reliability and that consistency. You know what you're getting in that department. And there's still a lot of excitement over Tysier Denmark. You're getting Peter Gonzalez back from injury. There are plenty of question marks with Caden Saunders and other guys, with Anthony Ivy, guys who you're like, we're waiting to see if they pop. So again, this is all wait and see in my mind. Like, I'm excited about it, Justin, but I'm so curious to see what comes out of training camp today and the next few weeks of how are those top 3 transfer guys doing. And especially, and you know this very well, working with LIG Sports Group and players that are transferring late in the cycle, Pena only got on campus within the last few months. So how difficult is his learning curve within Kotelnicki's offense?
It's going to be a steep learning curve, but it's also, I mean, job of the coaches to get him up to speed or put him in positions to where he can play fast, right? Where he's not thinking and trying to learn a playbook from front to back. But, you know, it's like getting picked up in the offseason in the NFL. It's like, all right, you got to learn these plays. This is how we're going to come at you. This, that, and the third, until we build around the things that are natural for him to execute as a receiver that are maybe similar to the things that he did at Syracuse. But that's kind of the implementation plan that I would get for a receiver coming in to a program that has to produce in a month.
Yeah, has to produce in a month. And listen, there's going to be the steady consistency of the running game that Penn State's going to have on offense this upcoming year. So it's not necessarily looking at the wide receivers as you guys have to be Superman, that sort of thing. But there has to be better productivity than last year. So the issue about being in a conference and then the number of conference games continues to come up. And Franklin said this for years. He believes everybody should be in a conference. If you're Notre Dame, they don't give a F what you have to say because they're raking in money from NBC. They set their own schedule like we talked about, and they don't have to adhere to any of these things. And they'll probably waltz into the college football playoff most seasons as long as they win 9 games. Even 8 games might be the argument if the playoff expands. The thing I think is interesting, I don't know if I've asked you about this, is the consistent messaging from Big Ten coaches that came out of last week and SEC media days the prior week, where the SEC coaches are saying, why should we play 9 conference games? And the Big Ten saying, we play 9, the SEC should play 9. So in your opinion, should the SEC play 9?
Absolutely. Just to keep the competitive balance similar. And then we talk about that being the best conference. It's a top-loaded conference at the end of the day. And I think that's what people are pointing out is the SEC takes that claim of, hey, we're going to schedule a non-conference game because the SEC is so tough. But when you look at it, I mean, you're talking about the top 5 to 6 teams, 4 to 6 teams on a given year that are legitimate teams in the overall scheme of college football. So when you look at that in the Big Ten, you might have the depth of the Big Ten or the amount of competitive games in and out is a little bit more balanced now with the Big Ten and bringing in the old Pac-10 into that situation. So I think us moving forward with media rights and the college football playoffs expanding, I think it's fair to have everyone play non-conference games so that at least the people that are judging who's the best team, they're like comparing apples to apples and not apples and oranges, because it seems like that's been kind of left at the altar the past couple of years, when whether it's Florida State a couple of years ago or it's this, and we're just trying to determine based on strength of schedule. Just play the 9 games. Let's see who comes out on top, and let's get into the bracket and go.
Devil's advocate, if you're the SEC, why would you acquiesce to that? Why would you admit or put on paper that we are the same as any other conference? Because their stance is that they are the best.
I would never do it.
that's the standstill. Yeah,
I would never do it until there's like a college sports commission that cares about competitive balance and wants to make sure everything's equal across the board. But that's still a little bit of the amateurism that's happening. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the SEC will ever admit that they're the same as any other conference. The Big Ten would be the only conference I could see them saying, hey, we're somewhat equal, but I think the SEC is going to maintain, hey, we're going to do whatever we want because we're number one.
Well, now when we start talking about the money and revenue sharing, right? So like I think we're going to be able to see like, okay, who's producing what money? Like, so if we're saying like, hey, it's just based on the arbitrary, these teams are better versus like, hey, the Big Ten brings in 2.5 billion. You guys bring in 800K. Let's change it. That's what's going to happen.
And we're also entering the era of billionaires being involved in college football, and some of them are in the Big 12, and that's the interesting thing we have to keep an eye on. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about training camp. We already kind of touched on wide receiver. I am very curious to see how that position evolves. The other positions that I will be hyper fixated on as this camp continues, and I'll put it in descending order, I think, in that at number one for me, it's D-end number two, and that's not Deni Dennis Sutton's backup. It's who is the defensive end opposite Deni Dennis Sutton. There's a lot of positivity that's been spoken about Zariah Fisher, longtime part of the program, injury-riddled career, has potential. A lot of people think he could have a breakout season. That was echoed at Big Ten Media Days by his teammates and by James Franklin. So the expectations have been put out there, but will that production actually occur? I'm dying to see if that comes to fruition because I think this defense could just look so different this year, Justin, and that for years, Penn State has been able to rely on a elite defensive line, elite defensive end play, not always elite defensive tackle play, average to above average there for a little while. And I'd say Zane Durant is well above average, so no disrespect to him. But I just feel like the secondary is probably going to be the strength of this defense. You might see the sack totals and the pressure totals come down statistically. It's just going to probably feel different in that department, but I hope I'm pleasantly incorrect on all this. I hope that Zariah Fisher and Deni Dennis Sutton can be bookend defensive ends. From what you've heard about Fish, do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible, man. I would think health is always a concern when you talk about just talent and depth in the football team, especially when you talk about interior linemen. It's a highly injured position, but if they stay healthy, hopefully they can fill that role and make an impact on the other side.
For me, it's defensive end number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'd love to know what that depth is going to look like. Defensive tackle beyond Zane Durant, who's defensive tackle number 2. I think there's a lot of speculation that it's probably going to be Alonzo Ford. Alonzo Ford has been injured for quite some time now, stemming back to last season. Will be getting back into the rotation here in camp. That's the expectation. So Jim Knowles, who only just got his hands on this defense a handful of months ago, has not gotten to work with that player. So in terms of the depth of defensive tackle beyond Durant and Ford, who are upperclassmen, Ford a recent transfer a few years ago from Old Dominion, beyond that, Justin, it's a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, like underclassmen who've yet to get out there. And you always talk about, hey, it's not a question of a lack of talent or depth. It's just that lack of opportunity and experience, not because the team's not affording it to them. It's just other guys are ahead of you. They needed to play. So how are you feeling about the depth at D tackle?
Until we get into the season, it's hard to say, right? Because, I mean, you can have promise, but until you line up against Big Ten linemen and you're reading your keys and not getting washed out of your gaps, time will tell. But you need those snap counts to get that up. And that's the one thing we lack experience in the interior line is that it's kind of a wait and see what they're made of when you get in those first couple games and try to throw them in the fire.
Well, and that's the thing. The first 3 games, no disrespect to Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, but the first real test for Penn State, September 27th at home against Oregon in a whiteout at night.
Better bring the lunch pail.
It's a really difficult proving ground. Even if all those things are in your favor at home, the whiteout night game, all that sort of stuff, it's still a high-quality opponent that beat you in the Big Ten title game last year and played in the college football playoffs. So for me, my top concerns are defensive end, number 2, defensive tackle, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then linebacker. And I think the more I've learned and heard about Amari Campbell, it sounds like he's going to be a really good fit for this defense with Jim Knowles. Tony Rojas coming back from injury, I'm just curious to see what his learning curve is this time of year because he has been out with injury quite a bit during the offseason, but is good to go for training camp. So Jim Knowles, kind of like Alonzo Ford, it's like, hey, I'm finally going to be able to get my hands on Tony Rojas and really guide him and see what this linebacker position winds up being. Considering the concerns I just laid out at defensive tackle, and there's concerns at linebacker, would you speculate that there's going to be maybe deficiencies in run defense this year, or where do you see potential holes?
I think when you got guys working in at the linebacker position, I think you have to make sure that guys are instinctually correct, right? Making guys right up front when you're dealing with interior linemen that may be getting their first snaps and making sure nothing bleeds into the second level. So I would say the consistency of the linebackers as they rotate in is something that I'm going to be looking for, because they're the ones that make everything right, whether it's the back end gaps and play action or making sure that the holes are covered from anything that the defensive line may let slip through. So the linebackers is what I'm looking for this year.
For me, the third most worrisome position battle, wide receiver. I think, again, on paper, you feel good about it, but you just got to see what it actually looks like on the fields. We touched on that before. For me, outside of D-end, defensive tackle, linebacker, wide receiver, I think there's questions about the safety position that you really didn't have last year because you had such incredible depth. And granted, you lost KJ Winston early on in the season, but Jalen Reed played very well. Dede Lane came in to supplement that position. You had a really nice season from Zakee Wheatley, and the expectation is he's going to carry that over. You get King Mack returning from Alabama after transferring out of Penn State. Once again, is a Nittany Lion. How do you feel about the safety position? Because like you and I have talked about lockdown, the corners, the cup runneth over. It's not that I'm not worried about that position at all. It's just I feel like the depth there is maybe the best on the entire team.
Well, I mean, I have trust in the safeties just on based on how they've been able to develop and fill those gaps, whether it's from Brisker to Brown and Coach Poindexter's ability to develop guys and just how, like, the raw materials that they bring in. Someone like a Zakee, just having the reps and coaching. I mean, we know what King Mack is and these guys, so I'm not really concerned about that safety position, just based on how they recruit and the positions they put them in, and just knowing like who they're being coached by. It's shown to I'm not really concerned about the bottom level floor of that position, just based on historical evidence.
I'm very interested to hear more about how Aldavian Collins is doing at corner. Zion Tracy, how's he doing? Another guy who's been out due to injury for a while. Elliott Washington, who was the star of the winter workout period and played well during spring ball. So it's like, okay, out of the weight room, onto the field. How's that look? All that sort of stuff. I think the depth there is incredible. I think a lot of Antoine Belgrave Shorter, and then AJ Harris is kind of the number one defensive back. Not kind of. I mean, we basically heard at this point, Justin, the expectation is that he's lining up across the number one wide receiver for the opponent. So I believe it was Jim Knowles saying, it's like, we could move him around, but do you really want to? And that's a very interesting thing to get into. And you understand what that's like, having been the number one corner at Penn State during your career. When you get to that point where it's like you have to be on the number one guy, and for Penn State's purposes, that means November 1st, Jeremiah Smith. What's that pressure like?
It's interesting. I mean, I asked for it when I was there, so that's what I wanted to do. One thing I would make sure, any corner that decides to travel, you have to be in shape. That's the one thing that I don't think people take into consideration, like just the flipping the sides of the field. Like, not only do you have to cover the guy, then you have to get back to the middle and go back and forth. So it's just a little bit more extra mental gymnastics. So as long as you're prepared physically to do that, and you want to, put that chip on your shoulder, I love it. You know what I mean? But it's not for the faint of heart. Like, it's not for the weak, and be ready to have the ball thrown at you and to be ready to make a play. It would just make sure you're in shape.
We'll see how that progresses for AJ Harris. It's a lot of positivity. A lot of people, depending on who you talk to, believe AJ Harris is the best cornerback in the country. Some people believe he's top 5 at the position. Could be a high draft pick, but one thing at a time. For me, the position battles that I don't think they're flying under the radar, but people are, it's not necessarily something pressing right this second. Running back 3, running back 4 as well, and then who's the backup quarterback? because Penn State is fortunate at quarterback. They haven't had that question of who's the backup quarterback for a handful of seasons. Bo Perbula, a lot of comfort when he was a part of the team, that you knew that if he came into the game, he was a competent player, a solid player, gave you a different look and gave different options to the offense. So you take some of those options away, the gadgets that Andy Kotelnicki used last year with Bo Perbula. So the question is going to be Jackson Smolik, Ethan Grunkemeyer. No disrespect to the other quarterbacks in the room, but that seems to be the battle there for quarterback number 2. So we're just going to have to see what that eventually looks like. And you pray to God there's no Taquan Roberson situation. Ironically, Penn State plays at Iowa at Kinnick this year. So we'll see how that goes in October. But running back 3 and 4, I know you have a pretty good handle on the running backs. Some injuries at that position stemming from last season, new blood as well. And Tyke Hayes, I know you think a lot of him. What do you think this position actually looks like this year? Because it's so top heavy with Singleton and Allen.
That's a good question, man. It's going to be really determining. It's going to be determined on how healthy those first 2 guys stay, right? And like if any of the 3 or 4 backs have shown any value in the passing game to be able to operate as like an H-back or just give them mismatch situations like that. I think if they're able to do those different type of things and play positions outside of just the traditional backfield eye or anything with the other running backs, you can see some nice remixes to how we approach, running the football or using running backs, right? I mean, you can look to like Sacramento State or Brennan Marion with the go-go offense and how they use multiple running backs. There's different ways when you have running backs with different skill sets to be able to use them and create significant mismatches in the offense. So I'd like to see if the Tyke Hayes, Quentin Martin, or any of these other guys work outside of the backfield and see if they can, get some movement from the slot and carrying the ball from that standpoint.
Cam Wallace and Corey Smith, who was small but fast as hell last year when he got into games. So I want to see how he progresses, because one thing that was pointed out about him was working on his body, just getting a little bit more stout. So that just comes with age for him. So I'm curious to see about that. If anything, Justin, the way that you phrased it just now, and ironically, just talking about Bo Perbula as the gadget guy last year, I'd say Tyler Warren was involved in a fair amount of gadgets last year. The gadget position might be running back 3, 4, 5. It just depends on that utilization that Andy Kotelnicki wants. And is it wide receiver more so? Trevor Pena has thrown passes during his time at Syracuse. So it feels like there will be those gadget guys, those gadget plays, maybe not as many of them. You get more options when you have a mobile quarterback who is a true dual threat as your backup, and it just confuses the defense, which is great. But you have the athletes to mess with defenses. I guess my question to you is, will Andy Kotelnicki need to rely on the gadgets nearly as much this year?
Hopefully not. I mean, I think they'll be probably more of a straight at them attack. I mean, which they did early in the season until they had different mismatches that needed to kind of have a different approach. But they have enough, I think, traditional roles with both running backs, the quarterback, new receivers coming in. I think they're going to go straight at guys this year. Like, just see what this personnel looks like from the standpoint of him saying that this is the best receiving core that they've had, and just attack guys. That's what I'm looking for.
We'll keep an eye on the position battles as camp continues. Please get in the comment section on YouTube and let us know which positions you're really interested in hearing more about. We can touch on that on the show. I do want to get to some recruiting information in regard to the future of Penn State football that you, Justin, would have firsthand knowledge of through LIV Sports Group. Khalil Taylor at wide receiver. What was it? Mr. Amazing, I believe is what you've called him in the past.
That's it, Mr. Amazing. Oh, Khalil.
He is transferred to Pine Richland just a week before preseason begins, still at the high school level. Not to give us too much in terms of his decision or anything. What should Penn State fans take from this?
I mean, it's the new age of college. I mean, high school and college sports. I think there's different things that you put your kid in the best situation to be successful, and whether it's from on field, off the field standpoint, I think that's what you're seeing is players preparing themselves to succeed in the college level, whether that's being in a better program, better learning environment, and things of that nature, and just making sure that you're curating that avenue of development. So when they get to a place like Penn State, they can take full advantage of what the college sports ecosystem provides, whether it's money, education opportunities, but making sure that the foundation is set. And sometimes you have to move and deal with the right school districts, or be in the right environments to let those things develop.
So Khalil Taylor, there's somebody who there's a lot of excitement about, especially the future of the wide receiver position. Khalil Taylor, Jasir Rogers, these are guys that Penn State fans are very, very excited about in the future. But again, you have to see if we even get to the point where these guys are wearing the blue and white, and we'll evaluate it more so as time goes by. And last but not least, in terms of recruiting, speaking of time gone by, class of 2027, top running back recruit, and as of now, a Penn State commit, Keemon Spell, has announced a handful of schools that he's going to be visiting once the season gets underway. One of which is Notre Dame. And the new running backs coach at Notre Dame is former Penn State running backs coach, Juwan Snyder.
Gotta love it. You gotta love the
don't hate the player, hate the game sort of situation.
That's 100% it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, that's a part of it. When you land top level recruits like Khalil or Kamon, like you gotta fight to keep them. You know what I mean? Like, even from the time we had Micah, the fight to get them back in the boat was harder than the first time. You know what I mean? So the recruiting process is it's a war, not a battle.
It's fascinating to me because it's like, it's a class of 2027 guy, and he's making official visits during the 2025 season. So it's like, this feels so far away, but this also has to feel like such a grind for these coaches in these recruiting departments to be like, let's just land the plane, man. And there's all these other sharks trying to take a bite out of it.
Yeah, 100%. You have to.
Fun times. Training camp just gets started. By the way, I want to send a special shout out to our friend Mike Poorman for the care package, courtesy of the Penn State Alumni Association. Nice little We Are coffee mug. I'm very excited about that. And he sent me some State College stickies as well from the State College Diner, Justin. Have you ever had the State College stickies?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like he might as well have sent me a bar of gold bullion, something like that. But he sent me two of them. So thank you, Mike.
Those in the meltaways. I think that's the State College.
Yes.
The meltaways. That gives me my
I like to. Hop in the comment section. Get at us on social media. Let us know how you're feeling about all these things, recruiting, the comments coming out of Big Ten Media Day, and especially training camp getting underway today in Happy Valley. Later on this week, we're going to have another installment of State of State, some big news for the show as we get into the 2025 season. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.